So Leil B'siyata Dishmai, Leil Erev Rosh Hahshanah Heit Tavshin Mem Gimel, the night of Erev Rosh Hahshanah of the year Tavshin Mem Gimel. So this is Chof Tes Elul Tavshin Mem Beis. Yom Tov Rosh Hahshanah is B'Shabbos. The Mishnah says the Yom Tov Rosh Hahshanah falls on Shabbos. B'Mikdash are you taken our labor Medina. They blow the shofar in the Beis Hamikdash, but not in the rest of the land. So we need to understand as the Tzemach Tzedek asks in his Maamor of Lahavin Atam, which erev Rosh Hashanah is the birthday of the Tzemach Tzedek. So the Tzemach Tzedek asks, Tkiya Shofar mitzvah say deraisa. Tkiya Shofar is a biblical mitzvah, as it's written in Pasuk, because of Yom Tov Rosh Hahshanah. And how is it? How is it that the sages, that the Chachamim, were mevatel this mitzvah because, as the Gemara says, the concern of Shema Yavirenu that perhaps somebody will carry the shofar in Rishus Harabim on Shabbos, and for that they've canceled the mitzvah, a mitzvah deraisa. We can ask even more to enhance the question. From the fact that they blew on Rosh Hashanah and Shabbos in the Beis Hamikdash, what does that tell us? That tells us that the mitzvah is still very much applicable. It's very much relevant. So that only enhances the question in that case. If it is still relevant and applicable, then why was it nullified or cancelled in Chutz La'aretz and even in Medina, even in the country in Eretz Yisrael, all because of this concern that perhaps someone will carry in the Rishus Harabim. In the Maamor, in the original, when the Rebbe said, he says, "Chutz La'aretz alachas kama v'kama in Eretz Yisrael." And he's differentiating that maybe you could find a reason to say that in Chutz La'aretz, but in Eretz Yisrael itself also. But in the Beis Hamikdash it remained. That's question number one. The psukim of Shofar is part of the three part brachas of Musaf, where we say Malchus Shofar. That we say the psukim of Shofar is, even though that Gam Shamer is a psukim kshura Bob Hemshal Tkiya Shofar, even though those psukim of Shofar are meant as a continuation from Tkiya Shofar. And yet the Rosh Hashana Shabbos ain't taken by Medina. We don't blow the Shofar, but yet we do. We still say the psukim. In other words, if the psukim are irrelevant, then why isn't the shofar relevant? Or if the psukim are important, then why isn't the shofar important? Why is the shofar pushed to the side? So he explains this in the Tzemach Tzedek's Maamor. How you doing? So he brings over here number 3 that we know this is a question that's asked in all over Chassidus by all the Rabbeim. The diuk, he says in number 3, is that the Tzemach Tzedek uses the term bitl. Number 5, sorry. He uses the term bitl, while in other places it says dachu, and which bitl means nullified. Dachu means just pushed it off. And the Alter Rebbe Siddur, it was he asks how were they able to uproot it. So there's different terms, which is probably a whole different thing. What's the difference, the subtle differences between if you say bitlu or dachu? So Tzemach Tzedek begins to explain the answer al pi hayidua. The kol hamitzvah shalanu is bichdei shayidei yisarusa delatata yisarusa delaila. The mitzvahs that we perform, their purpose is so that we should have an yisarusa delatata, so that our yisarusa delatata should achieve a corresponding Yisarusa Delaila from the Eibishter. Meaning, Hainu, the Mashishro, Mekayim is a mitzvahs, who they live al yidei ze mitzvahs shelamayla. By Yidden keeping the mitzvahs is in order that the mitzvahs should be able to be fulfilled, the Maila. What does that mean? Mitzvahs that are performed l'mayla are as a result of a reaction to what we perform the mitzvahs l'mata. Where do we get this idea from? It's a pasuk, and the Zohar explains the pasuk. The pasuk says because of us, you shall do the mitzvahs, but it doesn't say oisam with a vav. The pasuk says oisam without a vav, without the vowels, without the nekuda. It's atem ksiv. It can mean atem, you in the plural. Vasisem atem. So the Zohar says, Mala ni alechem kilo asoni. The Rebbe can vasisem atem, you are as if you're making me. Vasisem atem mitzvahs, you're making me do the mitzvahs. What are they? Ramach Bikudin says the Zohar, Inu Ramach Evarim the Malka. The 248 mitzvahs, commands, which as I say, are the 248 Evarim the Malka, the 248 limbs of the Melech of the king. Otherwise known as Pchinas Zoh. It's not going to get too Kabbalistic, yes, don't worry. So the mitzvahs are the Eibishter's Evarim. Every Ever needs Chayas, right? Every Guf has to have an Neshama, so every Ever needs to have Chayas. So Shachas, Ha'er, Ba'kelim, the Zoh. So to bring down the Eir into the Kelim of Zoh, V'chein Hagdolas HaKelim, and even to expand the Kelim, that is, that happens through the fulfillment of mitzvahs of us down here, when we perform the mitzvahs down here, Dafka. Again, how do we know that? As it says in Pasuk, Asher Yasa Isam Adam V'chai Bahem. So the simple meaning is that when a person does the mitzvahs, that will give chayas to the person. He's saying over here is the mitzvahs shelamayla, the Adam up there. He's dafka the mitzvahs the lamayla is dafka idea Asher Yasa Isam Adam, when an Adam down here and a Neshama Beguf performs the mitzvahs. That is what's going to achieve the mitzvahs up there. And what does it mean achieving the mitzvahs? It means eir and akeli chayas into the evorim. That applies to all mitzvahs, including the mitzvah of Tkiyas Shefer. So therefore, the Kumekin of mitzvahs Tkiyas Shefer. Shadesh Yisrael taken b'Shefer as a result of Yidden blowing Shefer. Nasai did it Tkiyas Shefer Shalamayla. This achieves a Tkiyas Shefer above. Okay, that's the first step that Tzemach Tzedek begins to give us our explanation. And that is, let me turn off this noise. Wrong button, a minute. Here we go. Okay. Okay. So that's the first stage. So the first thing we need to understand when we begin this journey to understand the answer to our questions is to understand that mitzvahs that we perform here have a corresponding effect above, as we'll elaborate in the next paragraph even more. So this, the Rabbeim explain with this idea in hand, that we are the ones that have to bring the Eir into the Keli, the Neshama into the Guf, the Chayas into the Zoh. Now, with that we understand the Pasuk. The Pasuk says, Mashakasav Tiku B'Cheder Shefer. What's the problem? The Baal Shem Tov asks the question, the Pasuk is written backwards. It says you should blow, and then when, and then with what? It should have said you should blow with what, and then tell us when. Tiku Shefer B'Chedesh, it should have said. What's the deal? Tiku B'Chedesh Shefer. So the Baal Shem Tov says it comes to teach us something else, in addition to the plain pshat. So the Baal Shem Tov explains the Mashakos of Tiku B'Chedesh. B'Chedesh Rishnichas LeTiku, that it says B'Chedesh close in proximity to the word Tiku is Ki B'Chedesh Kei, because the word B'Chedesh is actually referring to the Tiku. Not just the when, but it's referring to the Tiku as well. That what? B'Chedesh can mean month. B'Chedesh also has another meaning, Chadash, new. The B'chol Shana, says the Baal Shem Tov, that every year, tzarich liyas hatkiyas be'efen Chadash. The tkiyas can't be as if we're just doing a tradition of the past, but it has to be be'efen Chadash. You have the similar word in the Baal Shem Tov with reading the Megillah L'Mafreya. Baal Shem Tov also explains what does it mean to read the Megillah on Purim backwards. Mishnah speaks about a scenario of reading who reads Megillah backwards. So Baal Shem Tov says it means is that not to read the Megillah as if it's a story that happened way back, it's just history, that Purim is today, and we have to recognize, live the story of Purim as if it's today. So he's saying the similar idea over here, that the Tkiyas of every year has to be Beifin Chadash. Why does it have to be Beifin Chadash? Because every year there's a newness in Shefer itself. As we'll explain later on. There's something new happening every Rosh Hashana. We're going to learn at the end of Beis. And because there's something new happening, and it's as a result of the Shofar, so the whole approach to blowing Shofar has to be in a new way. And therefore, therefore, as we said in the previous paragraph, everything that happens above is a product, is a reaction to what the Aved of Bnei Yisrael here. And here brings a word from the Magid. The Mishnah Pirkei Avos says that we should be, Mishnah, simple pshat is, you should know, a person should always be aware that what's above, a person is aware that the Eibush is above, he'll behave in a much better way. The Maggid interprets it even more so. He says, the Chol Mashal Lamaylo, that every day you should know that everything that is Lamaylo, Humimach, it's from you. We create the reality up there. So blowing shofar down here creates a new reality up there. Therefore, the new way of blowing shofar here, that says the Baal Shem Tov, we have to do it in a new way. So that we should be able to achieve, be able to achieve above, effect above an Inyan Chodosh, something new. Okay, so that is still part of the same idea that what we do here is affecting what happens above. Beis. Hine, just as it is in the mitzvah Tkiyah Shefer and Rosh Hahshanah, that every year it's new. It's not just about Shefer that's new, but actually, what he's going to tell us here is that really all the mitzvahs, as we say, we'll soon quote, that every mitzvah has to be b'chol yom benecha kechadashim, that every day mitzvahs have to be chadash. How do we able to achieve every day mitzvah chadashim? We're doing it every day. You're putting on tefillin already for whatever, how many years? Every day should be chadashim. Where do we get the kerch to do that? So he's going to tell us that's what comes from shofar. Shofar is the mitzvah klolis of the whole year. So when we have shofar and a way of chadash, that'll have an effect on the way we do mitzvahs. That's what he's going to tell us here. So basically, hine k'mei mitzvah tkiyah shofar the Rosh Hahshanah. Shebechol shana shu beifin chadash al derech zebechol ha-mitzvahs. Same thing as by all the mitzvahs. K'may merazal, as it's brought down in Shulchan Aruch, l'chol yom yinecha beinecha k'chadashim. That mitzvahs every day should be like new. Not just kachadashim, but we say them mizu. Chadashim mamash, Rashi says in yesterday's Chumash. It should be actually new. Not like, but actual new. So all mitzvahs really have to be chadashim. Ela, sheb'tkiyah sheva, the only difference is, b'tkiyah sheva mekivan shehi mitzvah klolis, al kol hashana. Since tkiyah sheva is what you would call an overall mitzvah, a mitzvah klolis. Why is it a mitzvah klolis? Ki yedua, as is known, atama al mashenikra b'shem Rosh Hahshanah, as is explained. Why is it called the Rosh Hahshanah and not Tchilas Hashana? The reason is because of Ishu Hareish Akel Kol Yimei Hashana, because it's the head which includes in it all the days of the year. So therefore, the Reish, the Chadash, in Yizeu b'Yasas. So when you have the mitzvah of Rosh Hashana, it's a mitzvah klolis on a yom kloli. So therefore, this idea of chidush of this mitzvah klolis is b'Yasas is even more so. And from there, it is the root from which all the other mitzvahs come from throughout the year. So he explains this idea of chidush of tkiyah shofar, hu hasheresh shemimenu nimshach. It is the root from which is nimshach shegam hamitzvahs the kol hashana yir chadashim. That's where that all the mitzvahs we perform throughout the year should also be chadashim. Because what's the whole purpose of mitzvah tkiyah shofar and Rosh Hahshanah is shetam lechunei aleichem, to coronate Hashem as king. Now, the attitude, the way we are going to perform the mitzvahs is going to be same as the attitude and the way we crown him as king. If we crown him with enthusiasm, then our mitzvahs will be with enthusiasm. But if our attitude to Rosh Hashana and crowning him as king is less than that, then the mitzvahs will be less than that. It says, the first David says, first accept my malchus. Then I'll give you the rules. Therefore, when tkiyah shofar is in an erev chadash, nasakin b'chol mitzvahs, that will be the attitude and the approach to all of the mitzvahs. So that dalidei tiku b'chedesh nasa yitzchachus kvayochol b'midas malchusi yizbarach. Through blowing with a chidush, tiku b'chedesh, we achieve a yitzchachus, so to speak, in the whole malchus of the Eibishter. B'zeshu yizbarach melech al Yisrael. The malchus of the Eibishter is that he's a melech al Yisrael, and we are able through tiku b'chedesh to make a yitzchachus in that malchus of the Eibishter over Yisrael. Tam lechunei aleichem. Then, if we do that properly, then it's not just over Yisrael, but we will also then be able to renew the Eibishter's malchus over everything, over all of the Elamis, not just Yisrael, but all the nations of the world, and then the whole planet, the whole universe, and all the Elamis, in fact, as we'll see later on. All the elam is up there, upstairs. Because the Gamze Nasa idea, because this is also done through and for the benefit of Yisrael. That the Eibusha fulfills the request of Yisrael to be Melech over the whole world. With he says the whole world includes Nichlalim Kol Elam Iskulam. So when we have this word of the Baal Shem Tov, Tikku B'Chedesh, and we are able to do the mitzvah of Tkiyah Shefer with this Hischatshus, it affects our mitzvahs, and therefore it affects the way we makabel the Eibusha's Malchus, it affects the way that we do the mitzvahs, and therefore it affects the way the Eibusha is Melech over us, and over the whole world, and over all the Elamis. All from the way the Tkiyah Shefer is done. Right after the brackets now. So it is a hischatshus of the malchus of the Eibishter. What's the meaning of the hischatshus of the malchus? And every Rosh Hashanah, there's a new energy, a new chayus that comes down throughout the Seder Shtalshlus. Chayus chodesh lo yadayim ma'elam. A chayus that never was before in the world. Because of Merazokim, we get a sakedesh that we learned in yesterday's chitas. We get a sakedesh yudalet. A chayus chodesh that there wasn't, since before creation of the world, there never was such an energy in the world. Then this chayus doesn't just come down in Rosh Hashanah, but it comes down into the world throughout the year. Ad Yud Beis Rosh Chadoshim, Al Yidei Yud Beis Rosh Chadoshim. How does it come down through the year? The distributors are the 12 Rosh Chodesh. As is explained in the Sefer Teres Reish to the Mittel Rebbe. And therefore, this is we're talking about the Gilui. The Gilui the new Gilui that comes down every Rosh Hashanah as a result of Tkiyah Shefer. So that says also it affects the mitzvahs as well. The Chidush that there is in mitzvahs is Nimshachu me'achidush the Tkiyah Shefer b'Rosh Hashanah. The ability to be able to have a renewal in mitzvahs, to be able to look at mitzvahs every day as new, comes from the renewal that we have with the mitzvah of Tkiyah Shefer on Rosh Hashanah. With that information in hand, now we can answer the question. And that's what he's going to do now in Gimel and Dalet. Now we can understand an answer to the original question, how is it that on Rosh Hashanah falls on Shabbos we don't blow, other than in the Beis HaMikdash? Because that, what do we need to blow? Why do we need to blow on Rosh Hashanah? Is in order to achieve what? Is kanal, as mentioned above. We're blowing shefer here because we need to achieve the shefer that the Eibusha shefer should blow. Shabbos yesh b'china of shefer b'li avodas adam. Shabbos that exists, that happens on its own. It doesn't need us to do it. Shabbos does it on its own. What does it mean Shabbos does it on its own? It achieves what we would have normally achieved by blowing shefer. So he explains now. So let's analyze Shabbos and understand what Shabbos is, and then we'll understand how Shabbos does it for us. Yom Tov, the nusach, the text of the bracha of Kiddush, is we say Baruch Atah Hashem Mekadesh Yisrael v'Azmanim. So the Gemara says Yisrael inu de kachinu lazmanim. Yisrael are the ones who sanctify the times, the zmanim, the days. Mashenkin Shabbos imekatcha v'kaima. Shabbos is Kedesh on its own, independently Kedesh ve'enet luya b'Yisrael sheikatshua. It's not dependent on Yisrael to make Shabbos holy. What does it mean? There's a Gemara that says that the Bezdin Shalmaila comes to the Eibishter and asks him when is Rosh Hashanah. So they should know when to start preparing for Yom Hadin. So the Eibishter says, "What are you asking me? Let's go down and see when they decide Rosh Hashanah will be. It's up to the Sanhedrin when they're going to how they can make the calendar. We don't know when Rosh Hashanah. Elul could have 29 or 30 days. All the Yom Tevim are dependent on the Sanhedrin. The Sanhedrin can decide that the next Rosh Chodesh is going to be Rosh Chodesh Nisan, or it could be Adar Sheni, and Pesach is in 6 weeks. So Mekadesh Yisrael Vazmanim, the Zmanim of Yom Tovim is dependent on Yisrael. While Shabbos, the Eibush already established from the very beginning, he was Mekadesh every week, the seventh day as Shabbos. We don't have to do anything to be Mekadesh it. While Rosh Chodesh and the subsequent Yom Tovim that come as a result of the decisions of Rosh Chodesh is in Mekadesh, Yidden not do it. Therefore it's Mekadesh Yisrael Vazmanim. So the difference between Shabbos and Yom Tov is, Shabbos is Kodesh Mekadesh V'Kaima. Shabbos is pre-existing Kodesh on its own. Velochein, and that expresses itself in the physical realm. Yesh v'Shabbos adibin yonim she'im min hamucham. There are numerous things on Shabbos that are min hamucham. The simple meaning over here is things that are pre-prepared. Everything on Shabbos is pre-prepared. It's cooked. It's all ready before Shabbos. You don't have to prepare anything on Shabbos. So there are many things that are min hamucham. In fact, there are some things in Mehem Kama Beif and the Shleimus. Some things that are already prepared completely. The cholent may not be 100% prepared before Shabbos, but then there are some things that is fully prepared before Shabbos. Gam bli avedas, all them without the person having to do any effort. So Shabbos is mekadesh v'kaima. It's a full package already done. So the kedusha of Shabbos is all there. The Eibush already established and set that. On the other hand, we have psukim that say something interesting, additional. It says there's a pasuk that has the expression "Lasas Shabbos," to make the Shabbos. Meaning the Yisrael Eisim is Shabbos, that the Yisrael make the Shabbos. So too we read in Aseres Adibris, the Kiddush of Shabbos morning. Zocher Zim Shabbos Lekadshe, that we have to remember Shabbos in order Lekadshe, the Yisrael Tzrichim Lekadish as a Shabbos, that we have to add Kedusha to the Shabbos. If Shabbos is lacking, then why do we say that Shabbos is B'Shleimus? And if Shabbos is B'Shleimus and it's complete, then why are we adding to it? What needs to be added? So he explains there's actually two levels in Shabbos. In Shabbos, there's two levels of Shabbos. There is, on the one hand, Masha Shabbos Mekadesh V'Kaima Tzadatzmi. There's the Shabbos, the sanctity, the holiness, the kedusha of Shabbos, which is on its own. The Eibush made a complete circle, a complete Shabbos. And then there's the level of Shabbos which Yisrael Meisifim by, what we contribute, Alidei Avedosam. That Yisrael Meisif to Shabbos would add on to Shabbos through their Aveda. How does that work? So what is Shabbos? Shabbos is not Tainug. Shabbos is the Tainug. It's the Eibush sat back, so to speak, after 6 days of creation. And he looks back and he has a delight, Tainug, from the world that he created. Part of Shabbos Menucha, right? So there's the expression from the Gemara and the Medrash that Bo Shabbos Bo Menucha. That what was missing, the Eibush created the world for 6 days. What was lacking? There was a full world. What was lacking? Was lacking Menucha. Shabbos brought Menucha, Shabbos brought Tainug. In other words, it's not enough just the work. There needs to be the Tainug and the Menucha part of it as well.
Why am I Yisrael by the Avodah?
That's what he's going to explain now. He says,
previous
line, he says, Yeshtei Madreges. There's two Madreges. There's one, Masha Shabbos Mekadesh V'Kaima Tzadatzmi, and then there is Masha Yisrael Meisifim. What is Yisrael Meisifim? So let's see what is it that we can be Meisif. So what is Shabbos? Shabbos is in of Tainug. So the Eibush made the Shabbos, it means that Tainug is complete. Yet, V'afal Pikein Amru, regarding Tainug, the Gemara says, Kol ha'ma'anig es Shabbos. We have to delight and pleasure the Shabbos, meaning shetzrichim la'anig es Shabbos. So the same question. If the Eibush did it already, so what does it mean that, before we had the question with Kedusha, how are we going to add Kedusha to the Shabbos? Here we're saying, Kol ha'ma'anig es Shabbos, shetzrichim la'anig es Shabbos. V'chein, ksiv, v'karos ala Shabbos einig. We have to draw down, we have to call out, bring einig into Shabbos. How do we do that? Through the Aveda of Yidden on Shabbos, we're able to draw down an even higher level of einig. There's different levels of einig. So there's the level of einig that the Eibush put into Shabbos, implanted in Shabbos, and then there's the level of einig that Yidden add to Shabbos. But there's the einig which is there innately. Shabbos Mekadesh V'Kaima. And that is already a complete einig. Yidden are able to add on to that. So they're saying there's two parts to Shabbos. There's the Shabbos, what the way the Eibush created, with its Kedusha full, with its einig in full. And then there's the Kedusha that Yidden add to Shabbos. And there's the einig which Yidden add to Shabbos. As he elaborates, that it closes in a Shabbos who shows nasa shleimus b'chol habriya. As I said earlier, the whole union of Shabbos is Shabbos brought a completeness to all of creation. You could argue and say you didn't need Shabbos. You could have gone Yom Rishon, Yom Sheni, Yom Shishi, and then start Yom Rishon again. What would be missing? Rest, Einig, Kedusha, that of Shabbos is what is needed to finish the circle. Closing in a Shabbos is also nasa shleimus b'chol habriya. The fact that there was a day off, that made the shleimus. Because of vayichulu hashamayim v'ha'aretz v'chol tzvahom, and vayichulu in of shleimus kipir shetzemach tzedek. That is part of the completion. You can't just go from the last day of last week to from the last working day of last week to the first working day of the next week. There needs to be a break in the middle, not as a break to shlof, as a break for menucha and tainug that we're talking about over here, of kedusha. Because this makes the shleimus of the week, therefore it itself is b'shleimus. So the tainug of Shabbos is complete. That is why we don't have to blow shofar when Shabbos falls on Rosh Hashanah falls on Shabbos. Why not? What does shofar have to do with tainug? If we can link shofar with tainug, and tainug is complete, so then shofar, which is tainug, is also complete, so we're not missing the shofar, so we don't have to blow it. And that's what he's going to do now. Because shofar is also a symbol of tainug. How's that? Maamor, as the Tzemach Tzedek explains, the shofar meloshen shipru masechem. So now, language, we're talking in English. So we decided, or someone decided, that this is called cup. Now, we could have at the same time decided that this is called horse, and that four-legged animal in the field is called cup. It makes no difference. There's no significance. It's just that's the way society decided to do things. Lashon HaKodesh is exactly that. It's Lashon HaKodesh. It's the holy tongue. It's the Eibishter's language. And therefore, everything is significant. And even the words that are used in Lashon HaKodesh have significance. This device that we're supposed to use to blow and make a sound on Rosh Hashanah, we know it can't be a keren. It has to be a shofar. And the difference, the Mishnah speaks about the difference between a keren and a shofar, but it has to be dafka a shofar. What's the significance of a shofar? So one of the significant differences, he says shofar in the actual name. The word shofar. The word shofar is the same word as the word shipru masechem. Says the Medrash. The pasuk in Tehillim. To beautify your deeds. Or he brings another pasuk, Meloshen Haneisen Imrei Shofar, from Yaakov Avinu. When he benched his sons, he says Haneisen Imrei Shofar, that he is someone who says pleasant things. And he brings various other examples that the word shofar means tainug, pleasantness. The idea of shipru masechem, shofar is a symbol of tainug. Oh, once we could establish that shofar is a symbol of tainug, and the symbol of tainug is Shabbos. Shabbos is the ultimate in tainug. Because that's the shleimus of the whole of creation, and Shabbos is tainug. So therefore, put everything together we learned until now, that everything that happens above is from what we do here, is from the word to the Magid in the end of in the second paragraph of Aleph. In order to be able to achieve the tainug, i.e. the shofar, l'mayla, you want to make shofar above. That's not that's by blowing shofar here. So when we blow shofar here with a shofar, with a device called shofar, it achieves shofar and tainug above. That's why we blow shofar on Rosh Hashanah. But the kol that all applies, it is applicable and works very well when Rosh Hashanah falls in the week. Shaken b'Shabbos. The tainug is already there. We don't have to do anything. It's already there. Not just it's there, but we can complete and make it better. It's a complete tainug, as we said earlier. That therefore there's no need. Therefore the shofar is not so much betekev in kol hashturim with the whole full force of it, like on Rosh Hashanah. And therefore, we then, because it's not so necessary anyway, and there is a legitimate concern that somebody chas v'shalom will be mechal Shabbos and carry it in the Shus HaRabim, it's not so important to do it on Shabbos anyway. And there's a very real concern that someone may do this. So therefore, that can override, the very real concern can override the much lesser necessary shofar on Rosh Hashanah that falls on Shabbos. Because what shofar is meant to achieve on Rosh Hashanah is achieved through Shabbos on Rosh Hashanah. In that case, we're left with a very big question, a shturimdike question. Then why was it blown in the Beis Hamikdash in that case? If you don't need it on Shabbos, then why wasn't it cancelled everywhere? So Dalet. There's something else happening on Rosh Hashanah as well. In addition to what we just explained, that through Tkiyah Shefer on Rosh Hashanah, Shefer being Tainug, it achieves a Tainug L'mayla, it achieves a Shefer L'mayla, in Zoh, etc. Because the Mashal L'mayla is Mimoch, based on that principle. There's something else happening. In addition to that, through Tkiyah Shefer, it's not just that we are bringing Tainug up there. We're bringing Tainug also through the Shefer down throughout all the elements, down even ad Be'elam Hasiyah, even down to our world here. So it's not just that we're doing things and the word of the Magid is what we do here affects up there. He's saying even more than that. In this instance, what we do here affects up there, and when it affects up there, it actually comes back down here to us, into all the elements, even down to Elam Hasiyah, this world of action. Where do we see that? We say it in the davenings of Rosh Hashanah. Here's an interesting meditation, a kavanah that you can have in Musaf if you can remember it for 2 weeks. The pasuk, the Musaf says, "V'yeda kol pol ki ata pe'altei, v'yovin kol yitzur ki ata yitzartei, v'yema kol Hashem ba'apei chulu, Hashem melech." Right? What is it? There's 3 expressions here. That every pol should know that you made it. Everything that's made should know that you made it. Every action is you acted it. We call Yitzur, every creation should know that you formed it. And Kol Hashem Neshama Ba'apoy, anyone with the Neshama in his nostril will all cry out and call out Davish Melech. So the Arizal says, Visa B'Sida Arizal, that these 3 expressions, Gimel Hashem Elu, they refer to the 3 elements of Bria, Yitzira, and Asiyah. From down upwards. Neshama Ba'apoy is referring to Elam Bria, Yitzura, Ba'elam Yitzira, Upol, Ba'elam Asiyah. So when we say it in Musaf, Kol Pol, Katabalta, he's talking about Asiyah, and then Yitzira, from down upwards. These 3, Bria, Yitzira, and Asiyah, Hashem calls Kol Elamis. These are, generally speaking, these are the Elamis. Atzilus is not really an Elam. Atzilus is still part of Elikus. We refer to it many times as the 4 Elamis of Rabbiah. But Elamis as separate from the Eibishter, that's Bria, Yitzira, and Asiyah. And that's what's hinted to in those words of Musaf. So therefore, Rosh we say these 3 expressions because Ki Hamshacha, the Rosh Hashanah is B'chal Elam Iskulam, because that's the point that we just said. Because Hamshacha of Rosh Hashanah through Shefer, which creates a new reality up there, because of Kudam Malamaylimach, that Hamshacha, that what happened, that pleasure, that tainig which we achieve up there, affects and comes down B'chal Ha'elamis, Ad B'Elam Hasiyah, even down to Elam Hasiyah. Pol Kiata Pa'alta. And this gives us a deeper reason and understanding of why we don't blow shofar on Hashanah of Shabbos. Shabbos ain't taken. That this second element, the second achievement that's achieved through Tkiyah Shefer, not just the Tainug L'mayla, which we said in the previous paragraph, but also that it brings down, it gives the Eibusha the Tainug to be the Melech over here, to Hamshachas Tainug B'chol Elam Ad Lamato, to be able to draw down this Tainug of the Eibusha down to Lamato to here. Also, b'Shabbos nasazem it's at the Shabbos atzmi. Also on Shabbos, when it falls on Shabbos, this is also done automatically from Shabbos atzmi. So both the achievement of our shofar up there is done on Shabbos, and the result to bring it back down here is also done from Shabbos. Because the Hamshach of Shabbos affects all of the elements, even Asiyah. The holiness, the Kedusha, the Hamshach of all the items of Shabbos, the Kedusha, the Tainug, all that we spoke about, affects Elam Asiyah, as I'll explain now. Now he's going to tell us the next few lines how Shabbos affects even the Gashmis of this world. And it is explained in a number of Maamor, and amongst them also Maamor and Rosh Hahshanah. Shachai is the kol ha'ilmis. Gam the ilm asiyah, that regarding the energy of all of the ilmis, even the energy that Eibishter gives to this world, on Shabbos it's a higher caliber of energy. Shabbos much higher than it's a higher caliber than it is in the weekday. What would be the difference between the energy? The light, you have a light bulb on top of your head now, if it's on. The energy that goes into light doesn't change from Sunday to Monday to Tuesday. The same type of energy is the same thing in Buckingham Palace. We don't really have, that's not a good example. Here we're saying that the energy with which the Eibishter keeps the world going changes, a different type of energy on Shabbos than it is during the week. So he says, what would be the different type? The energy with which the Eibishter energizes the world during the week is from the Eibishter's speech. The Eibishter has something that we don't have. The Eibishter can create by speaking. You and I can ask something, and perhaps if we're lucky, someone will fulfill what we ask. If you're really lucky, you can snap your fingers and someone will. But your talking isn't going to create a new reality. Your thinking certainly won't. The Eibishter during the week, the Chayes of the Elam is from his Eisiyas HaDibur. He created the world with speech. And in Shabbos, the Eibishter's Chayes of the Shalom is Meises HaMachshava even, an even higher level. So the Shabbos Peil B'chol Eilumis. So Shabbos affects all of the Eilumis, even down to Eilam Hagashmi. Not just is it the energy of this world exists on Shabbos from the world of Machshava, but Va'ach is a Peil, it actually has a shinui in the Teva of the world. And here we bring that the point is we want to show how Shabbos affects everything. It changes the nature. What did it change the nature? So we have an example from Halacha, an interesting Halacha. The Mishnah says that the Talmidei Chachamim wouldn't eat from the produce of an Amoretz during the week because you can't trust him whether he took off the Maisris or not. So that's called Demai, right? But on Shabbos, you could trust him because on Shabbos the Amoretz can't lie. On the weekday he could lie. Interesting thing. Because it's Shabbos, he won't lie, and that establishes itself in Halacha. So he says, it changes the nature of the Amoretz. On Shabbos, because of the nature of Shabbos, this person's nature changes, and he's not able to lie. And this comes down in Halacha. The Rambam brings it down as well. That is an example of the effect that Shabbos has. And therefore, we don't need to blow shofar, even for the second achievement of blowing shofar. First, the purpose of blowing shofar, we said in the previous paragraph, is in order to achieve a tainug l'maylo, so that the Eibishter should blow shofar. And that is the idea of tainug which there is in shofar. The second achievement of shofar is damal l'maylo mimoch, in order to bring the new erev that is achieved through blowing shofar above should come down and affect elamis. Even elamas asiyah. Even this Gashmizdika world, that's also done on Shabbos, because Shabbos affects this world too, as in the example we just gave. So in that case, what about the Beis HaMikdash? Why do we blow in the Beis HaMikdash? Mikdash, are you taking Gam B'Rosh Hashachol B'Shabbos? Is because of the fee Shebchinas Hatayim, Shebchinas Shofar, Shemshicha, Deit Ki Hashem Mikdash in Elas Yisrael. The level of Tainug that we're trying to achieve in the Beis HaMikdash is a higher level of Tainug than what's achieved normally through Shabbos. And therefore, Shabbos doesn't make the cut. Shabbos isn't good enough in order to achieve that higher level of Tainug. And therefore, they need to have the Tainug / Shofar of the Beis HaMikdash. V'hainu, she'hatainug, dehatainug shemamshichim al yedei Tkiya Sheva v'Medina, hu hatainug sheyesh b'Shabbos mitzad atzmei. The Tainug, the level of Tainug of delight that we're able to draw on a weekday Tkiya Sheva in the rest of the world, that is the Tainug, as we said earlier, that's the Tainug which Shabbos has on its own. That's the pre-existing Kedusha that they installed in Shabbos. Therefore, Shabbos ain't taking Medina. However, by blowing shofar in the Beis HaMikdash on Rosh Hashana, we're able to draw down a different level of Tainug completely, which Shabbos does not have on its own. So in other words, even when Rosh Hashanah falls during the week, the Tainug, the shofar of the Beis HaMikdash was different than the shofar in the rest of the world. Because the shofar in the Beis HaMikdash is of a higher level of Tainug. whether it's Shabbos or not. This would be the second level that we mentioned earlier about there's the einig that there's in Shabbos intrinsically, and then there's the einig kol ha'ma'anig is a Shabbos, when a person adds to that. That there's a level of tainug that doesn't exist in Shabbos on its own. It only happens as a result of the avodah of Yidden. You're taking Shabbos, and that's why they blew in shofar the Beis Hamikdash, because the b'china zuhi l'mayla yezu b'chinas hatainug, because this level is a level which is higher than the level of tainug. Gam also even the kol ha'ma'anig is a Shabbos, even higher than the tainug of a person who is ma'anig, who pleasures the Shabbos, which is the avodah of Shabbos. And this can only come on Rosh Hashana through the avodah of B'chiyas shofar. So in other words, there's three levels of tainug. There's the tainug that they wish to put into Shabbos, which we have every week. There's the tainug that Yidden contribute to Shabbos, which they can have every week. And then there's a level of tainug even higher than that, which is through the shofar in the Beis Hamikdash, and he doesn't differentiate here between whether it's on Shabbos or not. That's the third level of tainug. Maybe, I don't know, maybe he'll talk about it later, that when Shabbos is in the Beis Hamikdash, so it's actually an even higher level. In the third level itself, it's an even a higher level, perhaps. But so far, he hasn't said anything like that. So the blowing shofar in the Beis Hamikdash is even higher than the tainug that we can contribute to Shabbos, which is higher than the tainug of Shabbos. Three levels of that tainug. So we've answered our questions, and that, therefore, because it's so holy, so special, we're not concerned about blowing shofar on Shabbos, and therefore, we are concerned about Chilul Shabbos. Okay. Just by the way, to make a note, later on you can look, there's a Sicha in Chelik Zayin for Pesach. And over there it gives a interesting alternative explanation of why we don't blow shofar on Rosh Hashanah, on Shabbos. It's a Pesach Sicha, because the Rebbe is contrasting how come they canceled shofar, and they canceled lulav, and they canceled Megillah if it is on Shabbos, but they didn't cancel matzah if it falls on Shabbos. So it's a nigla sicha, pilpul, but there's a whole section over there where he explains the idea of shofar and Rosh Hashanah. Chelik Zayin. Okay. Let's move on. Perek Hey. So that, we have already a whole package now. We've had the question, the explanation, and the answer. You have a fartige word for Rosh Hashanah. Now let's go analyze mitzvahs and the tainug that's achieved through mitzvahs and why the Eibishter likes mitzvahs and what it does. So now, to further explain what we just said, as the Tzemach Tzedek continues, this whole Maamor is based on this Maamor of the Tzemach Tzedek. We talk about tainug in mitzvahs. Till now we talk about tainug of Shabbos. We talk about in general, all mitzvahs. There's a tainug. The Eibishter has a pleasure when we do mitzvahs. So there's two types of delight in mitzvahs. Two types of pleasure. If you know Aleph, the first type of pleasure is hatainug mizeh shekim tzivah HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is the tainug that he fulfilled the mitzvah, the command of the Eibishter. The Eibishter said,
tainug. We've got a tainug. The Eibishter's got a tainug.
Sorry?
He said, hatainug mizeh shekim tzivah HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So we're getting tainug. The Eibishter's getting the tainug.
Who's having the tainug?
Yeah, I'm asking the question. A tan mizeh means shekim tzivah HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Yeah?
Yeah.
That means, but sure that refers to Yidden, no? Or am I wrong?
Getting the tainug of a Yidden doing a mitzvah. Talking here, I think he's talking, I understand what you're saying. Is it could go both ways. It could be talking about our tainug, or it could be talking about the Eibishter's tainug.
It could go both ways.
So as we're going to read on, we'll see, I think it's talking about the Eibishter's tainug, because he's going to be talking about different levels of tainug within the Eibishter. So he's talking about the tainug that the Eibishter has.
Just the choice of words could be read the other way.
It could. But here we're talking about not the tainug that I have by performing the mitzvah, but he's talking about the tainug that the Eibishter has.
Right. So the choice of words could be different.
Of course, a Yid can have a tainug. A Yid can do a mitzvah two ways also. He can do it with tainug, with a gishmak, or without a gishmak. Just do it because he has to. But that's not what we're talking about over here. Here we're talking about the gishmak that the Eibishter has when we do a mitzvah. That a Yid was makayim the tzivir of the Eibishter. So from the fact that a Yid kiyem mitzvah, the Yid was kiyem a mitzvah, the Tainug Zu, this is b'chol mitzvah b'shava. That Tainug is a basic Tainug that the Eibishter has equally b'shava by all mitzvahs, that a Yid was fulfilled as a mitzvah. Because the Mekivan Sharatzin Ushava b'chol mitzvahs, because since the Eibishter's Ratzin is equal on all the mitzvahs, the Meila Gam Tainug shemitzad Ratzin is b'kulam b'shava. If the Ratzin is equal, the Eibishter wants us to do all the mitzvahs, so therefore the pleasure, the delight that he has from us fulfilling the mitzvahs is also b'shava, is also equal. That's on one level. When we talk about the tainug that the Eibishter has from our mitzvahs. Even abei so a tainug aproti shebechol mitzvah. The second way of looking at it, or the second level, deeper level, is the individual tainug that there is in the individual mitzvah. The bechol mitzvah yesh tainug miyuchad. Each mitzvah has its own flavor of tainug. There's the tainug that you have from food, for example. And then there's the individual tanugim from different types of food. Food as in giving energy, giving kayach to a person. So they all have it. It all has it in common. There's a tainug that you have. You're able to have the delight of eating food. Then there are specific foods. Each one has it. This one tastes like this one tastes like that. This one's cold and this one's hot. And the different types of delights. Same thing is over the mitzvahs. There's the tainug, which is shava equal by all of them. It's a tzivur of the Eibishter. And then there's an individual tainug proti in each individual mitzvah. The whole mitzvah is tainug miyuchad. So the Tzemach Tzedek explains in the Maamor that tainug proti shebechol mitzvah. That what's higher, the individual tainug or the klolos dika tainug? So the Tzemach Tzedek explains that tainug proti shebechol mitzvah hu nele yesem tainug shemitzad haratzon b'shebeshav b'chol mitzvahs. The individual tainug is higher than the tainug of the ratzon, which is equal by all the mitzvahs. Now this is a chiddush. This is a chiddush of the Tzemach Tzedek in that Maamor, because the Maamor came that he brings in 49 in various places. It's like mevur. It's explained that the kavanah pratis of every mitzvah is lamata b'madrega ma kavanah klolis. That the specific detailed kavanah of every mitzvah is actually lower than the kavanah klolis. Even the Tzemach Tzedek himself, in Derech Mitzvah, he says that if a person isn't able to have the kavanah, doing each mitzvah has its kavanas. The Arizal gives different. If a person isn't capable of having those kavanas, so have the old general kavanah that it's the ratzon of the Eibishter, because that overrides everything. Here he's saying the exact opposite. Here we're looking at it the other way around. That the kavanah pratis is on a higher level. There is a perspective that the kavanah pratis is on a higher level than the kavanah klolis. The kadmevar, the tainug prati is nele yeseh. So, to bring the two perspectives together, that he says in 50, that we're going to in the second Maamor. There's the hemshech of two Maamorim over here. There was the Maamor from erev Rosh Hahshanah, and then it continued on the second day Rosh Hahshanah of Mem Gimel, Tavshin Mem Gimel. So to explain these two things, that's in the next Maamor. Hopefully we'll get to it next week. So elsewhere it's explained that the kavanah pratis is lower than the kavanah klolis, and over here we're saying the kavanah pratis is higher than the kavanah klolis. So let's explain that. The tainug that there is in the general rotzen for mitzvahs, shu b'shava, which is equal in all the mitzvahs. The Eibishter wants us to do mitzvahs. That is called p'chinas gilui hatainug. That's the revealed tainug, so to speak, the tangible tainug. However, the individual tainug that there is in individual mitzvah, it's the shadish, the root of the specific individual tainug comes from a place in the Eibishter, from the moker tanugim, the source, the essence of where tanugim come from. In other words, from a place where it's not yet even experienced as tainug. It's the source of where tainug comes from. Right? We've learned different things, that the seichel comes from a place where it's not yet, it doesn't take on the hallmarks of seichel yet. Midas come from a place where it's not yet divided into specific midas. It doesn't take on the hallmark, the characteristics of midas. Tainug as well, there's a place where tainug stems from the essence, the source of all tainug, but over there it's not in a pleasurable way yet. It's not delight yet. It's the source of it all. So he's saying that there's the tainug which comes from mitzvahs, performing a mitzvah b'chlal. That's the tainug. The tainug aproti shebechol mitzvah shashu b'chinas mokar tanugim shelamayla, which is much higher than the gilui, the revelation of that tainug, the practicalities of that tainug. From that place, known as the source of the tanugim, from there comes a glimmer of tainug, cut to size, so to speak, for each specific mitzvah. Not just the general tainug, but a specific tainug for each level. So therefore, when we look at mitzvahs in general as fulfilling the ratzon of the Eibishter and therefore giving him tainug, that's equal by all the mitzvahs. But when we are able to look into the mitzvah and its specifics, its specific tainug, that comes from a higher place. Therefore, based on this, the Tzemach Tzedek explains, that's regarding all mitzvahs. Now let's look in Shofar. He explains the Inya Shofar, Masha Shofar Meloshen Tainug. Now we explained earlier that Shofar is the union of Tainug. Which level of Tainug is it? There's, like in every mitzvah, there's the Tainug of like the Rotzin, of the Klolos, and then there's the Tainug Proti. Move on. You can ask, here you have, how does Shofar work with Tainug? Because what's Tainug? Tainug is delight, something pleasurable. What makes something pleasurable? So you take art, for example. A plain white canvas is not going to be a piece of art. In fact, if you make a line, a black line on a white canvas, it's also not art. Only in the Meshugana world of today, where people stand and gawk at a painting that has a black line. Ooh, a genius. That's part of the Mishagas of today. In order to have the tainug, the beauty in something, has to have, it's a harmony of colors. And the chokhmah of the artist was that he was able to bring together these colors and produce this beautiful, magnificent piece of art. The same thing.
That's beauty.
Huh?
Eh?
Sorry?
That is beauty.
Yeah, which causes delight. Which causes delight. Same thing is with music. The same thing is with food. In order to be able to achieve, to produce a delight in the person who's experiencing it, it can't be bland. You add spices to it. Enough pepper and enough salt and enough this and enough that. You have a delightful food. Same thing is with music. One instrument isn't going to be a delightful music. You need a harmony of different instruments together. The more instruments, the more, and they come together, the more nicer it is. Delight is the experience of something that's beautiful, of something that's tasty, of something that sounds nice. So the result of that is the tainug.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So he says, Tzemach Tzedek says, the lachedin move on. Shofar is tainug. Tainug is achieved when there are various details. Specifically, so the tainug of sound, nigun uklei zemer, song and musical instruments. When do you have tainug? Shu dafke kishesh harkava shel kama keil is dafke when you have a harmony, a mixture of a number of sounds. Then you'll have the tainug. And therefore, the question is: we keep on the shofar keil echad. Since the shofar is just one lone voice, how can there be a tainug?
You can have a tainug of one singer, though, can you not? If somebody's singing, one person singing, can you not get tainug of one singer?
Probably can, but it's not you wouldn't call that pleasurable as you had a choir, if you had a whole capella singing. When was the last time you were singing without music background, without a choir, without anything? Maybe the Chazan in Shul.
No, I'm talking about people who the Chazan in Shul by himself, they get tainug out of them.
And that's why everybody complains.
You don't necessarily need a choir you don't need a backing group necessarily.
I say that's why everybody complains.
I understand when you come to
anyway, the point he's saying is that this is a single lone sound.
Or a garment which is different because that's beauty. That you call that beauty. But they can't get anything out of a single voice. But I'm not too sure.
You're talking about that it's nice. Yes, it's nice to hear. Tainug means that there's a delight. A delight is much higher level. For that, he's saying you need to have a few together, not just one. One is nice. He has a nice voice, so he's singing. Okay, it doesn't qualify yet for tainug. You're enjoying it, but it's not yet tainug. I guess that's what we mean over here. Same thing is with one color. Or, food is nice. It doesn't have any salt. It doesn't have any pepper. Okay, I'm hungry. I'll eat it. I'm not going to be delighted. I'll hear one soul's voice. Anyway, kasha you have. Yet, the reality is we see, the keil shefer ein by tainug. The sound of the shefer is not a delightful sound. In fact, on the contrary, not just it doesn't generate delight, it generates trepidation. Because of the famous puzzle we had it last week in the Maamor as well, the last few weeks, the Novi says rhetorically, the shefer be blown and the people won't trepidate, won't tremble. So too we find by Matan Torah, we say it in the davening of Musaf of Rosh Hashana. Everybody trembled. All of these tzukim are telling us, wait till I'm finished, 2 minutes, that all of these, that the sound of the shofar generates trepidation. Not just it doesn't generate tainug, it generates trepidation. Because of the tremendous gili that there was in the sound of the shofar by Matan Torah, Aleim, my Father, that you revealed to them, yourself to them, they should reveal themselves to them.
Remy, aren't we giving time to the Eibishter here, not time to us, surely?
That you asked earlier. So we're saying this whole thing is talking about
giving time to the Eibishter, not time to us.
We're not talking about us. They're right, exactly.
Yeah, so right. So we tacky have fear and trepidation, but surely the Eibishter.
Oh, I see.
The Eibishter's tainug.
Okay. Fine. So how can something which generates trepidation cause the Eibishter tainug? That's what he's asking.
Why not?
Because this is obviously a sound of bittul, as he says now. V'yamdu merochik. And charada and bittul is hepach tainug. Let's just finish the question. The shefer meloshin v'inyanei tainug. How can it be that for us it's trepidation and for the Eibishter it's tainug? The Eibishter is having the pleasure from us being frightened. Either this is a sound which generates delight, or it's a sound which generates pleasure, trepidation, whether it's for us or for the Eibishter. We can only know of the sound of the shofar how it is for us. And if it's that way for us, then it must be like that by the Eibishter. So what? For us, it's trepidation, and for the Eibishter, delight. That's the question.
Because we're doing what the Eibishter wants, aren't we? Bottom line.
That's from the mitzvah. We're talking here about this specific details of this mitzvah. We're talking about there's a specific tainug.
All right. Okay.
Right? The tainug proti we're talking about over here. Right? So the Tzemach Tzedek explains V'inyin Bazehu, he explains there in the Maamor, the Masha Shefer tainug. The reason that Shefer is tainug is liyesi b'chinas mokar tanugim. Shelamayla b'chinas gilei tainug. Okay, he goes into a whole Indian over here. Probably best, it's 11 o'clock. We'll leave it for next week. Mr. Hashem, we'll continue from here. Okay.
Shkoyach Avrami, thank you very much.